Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sound Mind here on Hope TV. Listen, I am so grateful that you are here joining us today. Welcome to season 2. Thank you for all of your support. You watching, sharing, posting, all of those were amazing and great, and it made this segment amazing. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you for your support. And as we always do it, I need you to stop right now. Tag 5 people, let someone know that Hope is on. Hope TV is on, Sound Mind is on, and we have an amazing guest for tonight, amazing topic. But I want to make sure that everybody can see it. So right now, if you're watching on YouTube, share that link with somebody. If you're on Facebook, you can do a watch party. Whatever platform you're on, share it because you don't want to miss the kickoff of season 2 today. We have an amazing, phenomenal guest, and I'm going to keep moving so we can get to it. Next, I want to just give a shout out to all of those people in the background that make segments like this on Hope TV possible. All of our producers, assistant producers, tech people in the background. Thank you so much. We couldn't do what we do without you. So I have the honor and privilege of introducing our guest today. We're going to be sitting on his couch today, and he's going to be guiding us through some conversation. He is a native of Macon, Georgia. He is the senior pastor of the House of Hope Atlanta. He is the producer of Hope TV and the visionary of not just Sound Mind, but Hope TV as a whole. Will you please welcome the Reverend Dr. E. Dewey Smith Jr.
Minister Brian, how are you, sir?
I am well, sir. Welcome to Sound Mind.
Well, thank you for having me. Honored to be here. You're doing such a wonderful job, having some much needed conversations. So you'll be commended. Kudos to you, producers, APs, and all of your guests. Great conversation.
Thank you so much, Pastor. And I just want to take a moment also just to say how privileged and honored I am for the opportunity to just have these conversations because, Pastor, growing up in Macon, where we're both from, we didn't talk about therapy. We didn't talk about going to see someone to work through our stuff. It was church, the barbershop, and the beauty salon. That's where you got all your conversations out. But I'm grateful for this opportunity. And I know our guests are so excited to have you. So everyone, you see Dr. Smith is on, go ahead and hit that share button, drop that link. It's time to dive in. Pastor, it's November. Thanksgiving is around the corner. December is around the corner with Christmas, New Year's Eve, and 2020 has been absolutely devastating. For a lot of families and individuals. People have experienced loss outside of just the normal losses of, regular heart attacks, life situations. But COVID has hit us in a way that we weren't expecting and not being able to celebrate our loved ones. And so I wanted to start off season 2 in the month of November with a conversation that I believe that you can help us navigate through the spiritual and the mental, emotional side, coping with loss during the holiday season. Pastor, can you just share with us some of your just immediate insights on that topic of conversation?
Well, again, thank you for having me. You said something in your introduction that I think is very fitting, particularly in reference to our hometown and where we're from and how we grew up. And what I'm noticing, that's important to me because we're ready to go to holiday season and home is important. Holidays is when I get an opportunity to go home. But what I'm discovering is this issue of not being able to deal with our mental health is really not based on geography. I mean, you would think just because how we were raised in the South, Macon, Georgia, middle Georgia, that it would be unique to that area. I'm finding that it's just something that's more systemic in our community at large. And whether you're in New York or Macon, it's everywhere in terms of African American community, such a stigma. And what happens when you mention Macon for me too, is when I'm coming back home for the holiday seasons, or people are going back home, they live a different place, or not being able to go back home. I get anxiety around the holidays now because for me, even going home is different. For those people who watch it, if New York is home or if Los Angeles is home and you're in Atlanta, a different part of the country. And this year's anxiety even about traveling home. I haven't been on an airplane since February. So what does that look like? Even just traveling home. So me, I can get in my car and I can go home. So I'm filled with anxiety because here's my issue. Where is home? Where is home now? The place where I grew up, the place going to see my mom, having Thanksgiving dinner, the house I grew up in. So someone else lives there now. The house my mother lives in, that house is no more. That place is no more. It's a business now. So even the thought of going home, whether it be through flight or me just driving an hour down the road, that by itself brings anxiety. Do I go see the cemetery, the graveyard to see my mother, to put flowers on my mother's grave, my sister's grave, my brother's grave? So going, where do I spend Thanksgiving? That's that brings anxiety. And this year, coupled with the fact now that they're discouraging us from gathering in homes because people have been, Pastor Wallace Heron, who is a man who helped raise me, he's like a godfather. I spent a lot of Thanksgivings at his house. Well, this year, his daughter, Dr. Lisa Heron, superintendent of schools at APS, she has COVID. Her older brother, Wallace, has COVID. Her daughter, Imani, has COVID. 4 or 5 people in that same household. So all of these different variables now about going home brings anxiety. And so, and I've gone through this last 4 years, like, okay, how do I deal with holidays? And so for me, first of all, is to acknowledge that it's okay. It's okay to have anxiety. Um, I'm good with how I feel. I know something's not wrong with me. So I think one of the biggest steps is when you deal with the holiday seasons and you have grief and loss, the first thing is just to acknowledge that it's normal and it's natural. Something's not wrong with you. So be able to process it. So when those feelings begin to emerge, at least I can understand what's causing some of the anxiety.
That's good. I like that. I like that acknowledging that it's okay. This was one of my first years. My great grandmother passed just last month, and so a lot of things, even though our family doesn't get together anymore after my grandmother died in 2011. What I'm finding, Dr. Smith, is it's now a new conversation, like you shared. Where do I even go? Where do I spend it? Um, and so even in that world and place, I'm sure there's some people out there watching right now where you've made them really hone into what's the real issue I'm facing. Is it really that I'm missing loved ones, or is it possibly that I haven't created a new home? There are some people I know personally. They have full families, like their own children and grandchildren, but during this season, they're still talking about, well, I want to go to my mom's house. I want to go to my dad's house. I want to go to my auntie's house, and they're no longer with us. And so, what I think I hear you saying is it's okay to feel like that, but you also need to start to create your home, your holiday ritual, your holiday practice.
Yeah, I think that's you put it so beautifully because I think for me it's the realization of what I lost, the realization of what made me sad, the realization of what is missing. Now, how do I find healthy ways to replace that or create a new normal? I think for me too, I spent a lot of times trying to feel normal, realizing I would never get that feeling again, that sense of nostalgia, that I'll never find that. But how do I create those new norms? Another thing I think that I've been able to do over the last couple of years since my mom died is find ways to help other people. There are a lot of
Mm,
people who are 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 homeless. Opportunities to feed people who don't have a home as well. And one of the things I
mhm.
find myself doing the last couple of years is being intentional on investing in places, whether it's wholesale feed the homeless. Different cities offer different types of mission opportunities for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I found in my own life that serving others out of my own pain brings about a joy that I never would have fathomed. So instead of just moping around the house, how can I go bless somebody else who's less fortunate? Okay, I'm sad, but at least I got a house. I'm sad, but at least I have some friends. At least I can buy a meal. My wife doesn't cook much. Somebody can cook for us, so I can go to someplace and order a turkey. You know what I mean? Some people don't have that. So I
Yeah.
found a lot of solace in being able to go out and find people and bless them during those seasons.
That's good, Pastor. Right now, if you're watching here now, I just want you to make sure you're tagging someone who you know hear this. Maybe there's a friend, a family member that's been sitting, and this time of year always kills them, always takes them emotionally out. I need you to tag them because they need to hear this. He's already said one, it's okay to feel that way. But two, maybe you need to recreate that, take that energy, that celebration, and pour it into someone else, gift to someone else. Dr. Smith, one of the things that I'm doing this year, I'm going to put up a Christmas tree. It seems so small, it seems trivial, but it's something that's big because that's me accepting the season. I may not cook and do a big spread, even though I'm a Southern boy from Georgia, from Macon. I can cook now. I can cook. But I'm gonna put up a tree this year because that's gonna be my step towards accepting a new reality during this season.
That's so good. Another thing I think you talk about creating a new norm. Another thing I think people can do is how do you memorialize the legacy? My mother was the one who loved to decorate. Um,
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to ask a loved one deceased who like to make cakes or pies. What kind of
Mhm.
traditions did they start that you continue, that you can have fun? This is mama's recipe. This is what they would do. How do I memorialize and celebrate their life in that moment? Who can feel the role that that person filled? If this person was the one who called everybody together, if this was the person who sent out cards, if this was the person who called or who bought candy or pecans, or this was the person who bought all the kids, candy canes, or who made the eggnog with or without the rum. Who was the one who did that? you know, so who can be the person that comes in to fill that place? Sometimes even that brings a sense of peace that the legacy is continuing, and the moment can be more celebratory versus still commiserating on what was lost. Who keeps it going? I think it's some joy in that as well.
That's good. Can you flesh that out a little bit more for us? You touched on passing on the legacy, passing on the recipes, passing on the responsibilities. A lot of times when some major people die, we find ourselves in a position where um, those traditions start to fade away. People don't gather and go to Big Mama's house anymore, so all the cousins are separate now. What would you say is a way we can navigate and kind of reel that back in when we've been separated during those times?
That's a great question. Every year, probably from 95 up until 2007, every Christmas, I would host a Christmas special. My media team will come, my wife, my siblings, my in-laws, my nieces, my nephews, my mother, some people from the church would come have kids record their speeches, do some songs. I would do a message. It was a family Christmas special that I would do every year. Well, when my brother passed away in 2007, um, I have just, he passed in 2007, I've just not felt, it hadn't felt the same. And my sister passed 3 weeks after my mom in 16. My mom passed in 16. So not having those three there just kind of put a damper on it for me. And then January is all difficult because they all passed in January. So I said to myself this time, because I felt that stuff coming on, I said, I'm gonna do a Christmas special this year. I'm gonna have some people gonna record it, 30-minute or hour-long special. It was a real big deal back in Macon. I did it one year when I was here, and people loved it. Just to have your family around and play it on Christmas, and good music, a good message, it's inspirational. And I said, for the first time in 13 years, I'm going to do it this year because I wanted to keep that going. My sons don't remember that as well. My son Kylan, he was a baby the last time we did one, so he has no recollection of his uncle. Um, he wasn't when he passed when his uncle passed, he wasn't 2 years of age, so he doesn't have those memories. So I said I want to do some things because it was a big deal. My nieces and my nephews, when they were kids, they longed for it. But I said this year I'm gonna go back and do it again, to pass that tradition on. Trying to find some of the old footage where we done it before. They kind of just memorialize what has been done. That it brought joy to people, it brought joy to us. I think this year's gonna bring joy to me just to be able to do it again and incorporate some people from the church. Just that tradition to keep it going and bring it back because it was a wonderful time of celebration. So, and I think and there are other ways we could do it. My mother was the one who would put up Christmas decorations out in December, November, and they still be up in Easter. I mean, she just changed it, keep the tree out, just change it for different seasons. And Andre, my wife, she's the one who loves to do the decorating. Now, my sister keeps that going. So I just think it's that find that way, that thing, whether it be the Easter egg hunt, whether it be Christmas caroling, if somebody has had a tradition of caroling or even opening presents. At one time we get together on Christmas Eve, right? And we spend this time
Yeah.
opening presents on Christmas Eve and on Christmas, but we meet at my mother's house or my mother-in-law's house, and we would, open the presents there on Christmas Eve. It was a tradition. It was something that we did, we look forward to. But so it's trying to find those things that are nostalgic, that are important, that brought joy and peace, that brought people together. And how can we visit those things? Now it's going to be different this year because of COVID. So there's some stipulations this year, but I'm seeing people are finding ways to have parties via Zoom,
Yep.
and have some creativity. How can we do it in such a way we still got some community, so we're not lonely, singing "What Do the Lonely Do for Christmas?" So important.
Pastor, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to dig into your theological brain. But there are some people out here who are struggling with God during this season. It's a little easier, lighter the rest of the year. But towards this November, December, January time, there's a struggle with God and the idea of loss. Can you help some of us navigate through that struggle of coping with the loss of a loved one and still feeling, I'll be honest with you, betrayed by God sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first pieces of any processing any healthy emotion is authenticity. I
Mm,
think I think sometimes for me, I found myself, before I can process fully my struggles or those issues of what we call in theology theodicy. I think
mhm,
I try to start with deconstruction because interestingly enough, sometimes the way we've been constructed theologically, it makes it difficult for us to really cope and process. Just the very notion that you should never question God,
mhm.
and to have that conversation makes it hard to cope if I can't be honest about how I feel. So sometimes how we construct it makes us more insular and inauthentic. So for me, the deconstruction is okay. I have a relationship,
Mhm.
and and I can struggle the same way the psalmist struggled in Psalm 22, and even Jesus. God, why you forsaken me?
Mhm.
He wasn't even dead. He was at the point of death, but even he felt forsaken.
Mm.
And so I think understanding that as a real human emotion and a normal emotion, that because we're so finite and God is so infinite, and because we have our attachments, and because we have the things that we love and hold dear to our hearts, and because we can be selfish because we want things our way, because sometimes we make God into a genie And sometimes we're fine as long as things go our way. And we're
Yeah.
great with God as long as God makes us happy or life makes us happy. In the moment that life makes us unhappy or people make us unhappy, we tend to run or withdraw. So was
Yeah.
me trying to get to the sense of purpose. Okay, God, I'm, I'm, I can kind of blame you, like Jesus, why are you forsaking me? Not understanding some things are purposeful, some things are seasonal.
Yeah.
Jesus, you got to endure this in order for you to get to the glory and fulfill why you were created in the first place. And this pain is a part of the process. And see, the problem with us is, and God is saying sometimes, Jesus, it's a part of the stage. I'm going to exalt you and give you a higher stage. I'm give you a name that's above every name. But sometimes what we don't understand, we struggle with God because we want stages but don't want phases. And unfortunately, the phases are the things that lead to the stages. And and the higher the stage, sometimes the deeper the phase. And so life is not going to be stages without phases. And so there is a phase when I have to go to God. Like, God, I don't get it. And God is good with that. Being
Mhm.
free and being free enough theologically to know that God can handle your questions. Being free
Yeah.
enough to know that God can handle your issues. Being free
Mhm.
enough to know that God can handle your emotions. For
Mhm.
me, even the fact God is jealous, I'm a jealous God. God can be angry. God can be grieved. Jesus wept. The very fact that these anthropomorphisms are used in scripture to show that the divine can have emotions. And so if
Yeah.
the divine can experience emotions, then you and I in our own humanity ought to be free to know that we're going to have them too. But even when we struggle with God or wrestle with God like Jacob, the reality is when I understand, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. And I'm going to keep talking to you. I would rather struggle and keep my conversation than allow struggle to bring about termination of the conversation. So I think being free enough to know that God is not just a powerful force, God is a personal father. And as a personal father, God is relational. And in being relational, we can go to God because number one, we got to believe that He is and that He is a reward of
Yeah.
those who diligently seek Him. So for me, knowing that God welcomes my emotions, that God does not punish me for expressing my emotions, that God is not angry with me for being honest, that God appreciates the honesty. And that's just freed me up to say what I want to say to God, not from a realm of religion, but relationship. It's okay. You say it, feel it, and then being real about depression and grief. It's just not you. I'm not trying to diminish it or minimize it. It's not just me. You know, it's God's greatest people, the greatest characters in the scriptures, men and women, all struggle with emotions. But but it took the phases to get them to the stages. And for me, that's my hope.
That's good. Oh, y'all, I know y'all are just taking this in like I am. Pastor, our time moves so quickly in this segment, but I just want to say thank you. I don't know what it felt like in 2016 after the passing of your mother and your sister and your best friend and those losses that year. But there may be someone watching right now who will bring this up later and watch it later, and they are sitting in the funk of their emotions and their new life they have right now. Can you just speak to them just personally in this moment and just give them some encouragement right where they are?
That's a great question. Thanks for giving me the privilege to do that. I am not normal. In 28 days, my godmother, mother, best friend, and sister all died. 4 eulogies in 28 days, 4 caskets I picked out 28 days, 4 funerals that I personally planned from the top to the bottom, 4 grave sites, 4 committals of the closest people in my life. The closest people, nobody on earth closer to me, other than my immediate family than these people. So this is my inner circle, which is already very, very small. left me in brokenness that I've never seen, in a place I've never been. And I didn't have, for about 6, 7 months, I did not handle it well at all. Trying to, you know, medicate, I guess, trying to find a way to process it. Didn't do a good job. And one of the things that my therapist said to me at the time, I want to offer to you, those who are watching, that helped me feel a lot better, is the first thing is I had to look at my role and my responsibility and my treatment of all four of those individuals. Um,
Mm.
One of the things that freed me was the reality that I did everything humanly possible to express my love and to take care of and to provide and to be there for all four of them. Sometimes in our grief, my therapist helped me to understand, sometimes there's a difference because they're very nuanced. Sometimes there's a difference between guilt and grief. And
Mm.
sometimes when people are grieving, sometimes the grief is compounded by guilt, by things that are unresolved with the deceased, the things that are left dangling, like some dangling participle. So for me, I had to realize, and sometimes people grieve worse, and it's so true, and I've seen it. Sometimes people who grieve the worst, they grieve the worst because something was unresolved. But when you know you've been there, and you know you have loved and you showed love, and knew it can bring about it helps you to decipher, is there anything else that needs to be resolved? Because the pain, dealing with the pain is enough, but dealing with the pain of their loss and something that's unresolved can be a combination that's almost that causes irreparable harm because you can't identify what it is because you're left always trying to figure out what is it. So when you know, okay, this is grief, which is normal, and this is guilt, because the way you treat guilt when there's somebody who's deceased is totally different from somebody who's just grieving normally. Very nuanced because there are different approaches. So if somebody died and I wasn't speaking to them, that compounds my loss and my grief.
Yeah.
But so I think it's important to be able to ask yourself the question: if I'm grieving, is there anything other than just the grief? All right, is there something that they expected of me that I didn't do? Did my loved one, were they disappointed in me? Is it something they told me to do or encouraged me to do that I'm not on the path? So, because sometimes I can find peace and resolution in moving forward. Okay, if my mother was upset with me because I wasn't doing something right, and I know she was right, now part of my healing is I'm going to honor her in her death with a new focus, with a new direction, with a new outlook, with a new trajectory. The things I did that were disappointing prior, I'm not going to stay stuck here to allow it to keep me commiserating. Let me use this pain to go forward. Okay, if it's grief, if it's guilt because I didn't do right, then who can I do right by? How can I ask God to forgive me? Because sometimes when that's grief, we need forgiveness. You know, we
Mm.
think we need healing, but it's really forgiveness that we might need that you can't get from the deceased. That's more of a
Mm.
spiritual. That's when that was more of a spiritual thing that you and God have to release and find a way to move forward. So you can have guilt, you can have forgiveness, you can have grief. But it's important to be able to identify which area, because at first it's all pain. It's all compounded all together. But if I can't look at it in a very nuanced way, then it will just continue to eat up at me. I'm never able to find any sense of healing or progress from it. So those who are watching, I think those are some of the things you got to ask yourself, because I believe the healing can be more imminent. I believe the healing can propel you to something greater. And self-destructive tendencies that we all can have, we're not careful when we're hurting, and even hurting other people. It eliminates when we can rightly identify the source of what's happening. And so for me, The blessing has been when I realized it wasn't guilt, when I didn't need forgiveness from many of the people who were deceased. Because at first I didn't know that. But just trying to process of elimination. That I was just in pain because of my anger with God. I was in pain because I wasn't prepared. I lost 4 people in a month time. That's trauma. Losing your mother enough is traumatic. So this is trauma. And when you go through that type of trauma, it's hurtful and it's painful. So when I was able to compact it and process it and vet through it to really get my hands around it, then I was able to move forward to know my issue was God and just a traumatic experiences. So I could eliminate the other stuff to focus more on my healing. So those who are watching, if it's guilt, go to God. Release yourself. Release yourself. God releases you. They're in peace. Now let God give you peace. If you need to move forward in your life, ask yourself the question: is what they said to me was true? Did I disappoint them in life? Because sometimes I've seen people who've had loved ones that died with heart attack and stress. They felt guilt. They felt they were responsible for it. As a child, I was in jail. I was in trouble a lot, and maybe I put more pressure on my parent. Maybe I helped cause the death. And that can haunt you for your life if and violent, and it's theological violence and emotional violence. But okay, I didn't do it right in life. But now with my kids, I'm gonna make sure I train them better, or I'm gonna do better. I'm not gonna cause this pain. I'm gonna use it to go forward. I'm gonna honor them with my life in there. And if it's grief, that's bad enough by itself. You can compact that with therapists, with prayer, and with honesty and authenticity. And as you said earlier, new normals. Those traditions we talked about earlier. And eliminating the stuff that's sad. Don't surround yourself with stuff that's sad. Pictures, photographs. Be around happy people, and your space and your environment is very, very important at that time as well. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir. That was excellent. Thank you, Pastor, so much. Well, family, listen, I hope you enjoyed this. I know you did. Please message in the comments right now. Tell Dr. Smith how much you enjoyed this segment and this time, and tag those people who need to hear it. One of the 2 things I want to just hit on that Dr. Smith said. First, he said he has a therapist. You can know all the scripture in the world. You can speak in unknown tongues. You need a therapist. You need someone who can help you through. Jesus and a therapist, they work hand in hand. And if they tell you to take some medicine, do that too, because it's necessary. It's really important, because God wants your mental and emotional health to be well, not just your body healed. He wants your mind and your heart healed as well. So thank you so much again, Pastor. And then he had a second part, and he says, I'd rather struggle than disconnect the communication altogether. Don't be afraid to wrestle with God in those tough places. I can't imagine what loss you might have had this year. I don't know what the burden is of going through a first Thanksgiving or a first Christmas or a first New Year's without that loved one you've been with. But you can make it through. But you're going to have to do the work. Continue to fight. Get around some people. Start some new traditions. Honor those and memorialize those that have gone on with continuing some of those traditions. You will make it through. This is not the end for you. And there is help and hope for you. So thank you, Dr. Smith, for those wonderful nuggets. I believe some people are going to really be able to get through this season of life that's difficult. Before we leave today, I just want to put some quick plugs in there. If you want to get in touch with Dr. Smith, please make sure you're following him on Instagram. It's at Dewey Smith. You can see it right there on your screen. In addition to that, we have amazing programming happening for Hope TV, but I've got to shout out his Friday Night Live. Make sure that you are a part of that. It's fresh every week. He's coming with the funnies. He also keeps us informed of what's going on in the world. It's definitely a treat. Thank you again, Dr. Smith. We're happy to have you here on Sound Mind. Drop by anytime you feel like you want to. And family and friends, until next time, take care, and we'll see you again.
felt I lost my voice, but it took 2 or 3 hours of devotional, going to therapy, exercise. You then realize you're not alone. You work and you pray, you'll be successful. And my brother always would tell me, it's like an equation. You got to put it together.
Pastoring is my calling, KD. Singing and entertaining is my gift. It's two different things. We're not just one-dimensional. If I did one thing at a time, I would be broke. Wow. And I refuse to be broke. Wow.
A lot of times in the church, and we like to judge people on their appearance or something we know about them from back in the day or something. And you don't know what I've been through to get to this point in my life and get this praise. Just to be where I'm at right now.